sectors and services that we don't control, but that there has to be an investment in Black leadership, Black women's leadership, because we know how to get it done. And the quick anecdote I was going to share was in Philadelphia, right? In Philadelphia, the city gave out grants to vaccinate their city in hard hit places. They went with a tech company that basically folded almost a month into once they opened up the vaccine, and a Black women doctor-led organization did not get the grant. And so without the funding, that Black women's doctor-led consortium outpaced the organization that got millions of dollars to get vaccines done, right? We need to be invested in at the leadership level, as well as the investments of the demands we're making around what makes our communities safe and healthy.
Absolutely, Monifa, that is absolutely it. Jateka, I know you have some work that you're doing, and we've been able to partner with Goldman Sachs on around investing in Black women at critical stages in their lives. Would love to hear your thoughts on this and hear a little bit more about the work that you're doing there. And then Dr. Cassie, would love to go to you next to hear about some of the investments that should be happening in the retail space as well. And then we can close out with Nicole on this question.
Yeah, you know, and it was so great to hear from Joyce Brayboy and the leadership of Goldman Sachs at the top of this afternoon session. And the recent announcement by Goldman Sachs, which for those who are just joining this session, was a $10 billion investment in the life of Black women over the next 10 years. It's a significant historic announcement in that it's the largest that we've ever seen in this type of investment, of capital investments. And I think what's significant about it is the impact, the reality of which where Black women are and what such investments can actually do in the life cycle of Black women. I think when we look at Black women across the board, you know, there are all of these statistics about us. Black women, we are the most statistically educated demographic in the country. Our businesses, we grow small businesses at a faster rate than any other demographic. Since 2007 alone, you know, the number of firms owned by Black women have grown by 164%. Additionally, when you look at Black women, we have $1.2 trillion in spending power in this country. And I think the statistics go on and on and on as it relates to the excellence and the brilliance of Black women. But when you look on the other side of it, Black women receive less than 0.3%, not 3%, 0.3% of venture funding, less than 1% of small business lending. We, you know, are only account for two, right now two, and just recently one was added, two CEOs of a Fortune 500 company in this nation, and we represent a small percentage of, you know, the highest growing industry in Silicon Valley and tech in terms of leadership. You know, the saying holds true that talent is distributed equally, but opportunity is not. So investments such as this investment by Goldman Sachs that will invest in systems that will look at the holistic life of a Black woman, everything from access to capital for that Black woman, to actually closing some of these housing gaps, helping close the economic gaps of the Black woman, looking at the holistic health of a Black woman is going to make a difference, because when we invest in Black women, everybody wins. It's not just the life cycle of Black women, but all of America wins. And Goldman had this incredible research, Black Womanomics, in which that research showed that if we reduce the earning gap, which the earning gap of Black women right now, it is a over 90% gap between the wealth and the earnings of a Black woman, a single Black woman, and a white man. If we can close that gap, if we can really close that gap, there is a potential to create 1.2 to 1.7 million jobs and add and increase $300 to $400 billion into the US GDP. That is significant. That is a winning strategy. When we invest in Black women, it is not only the right thing to do, but it is a smart and sound investment, because Black women are leading. We have the track record in what we're doing in the growth of our businesses. We have the buying power, and we have the aptitude to win. We just need the opportunity. And so this announcement and this investment of $10 billion, I believe is significant because it will do what has not been done, which is truly invest and center Black women in our investment strategies.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing about the initiative and speaking to some of the specific ways in which it can shape and fundamentally reshape some of the inequities that have been within our community by investing at key life points for our Black women and our sisters. So, Dr. Cassie, would love to go to you on this question.
Yeah, so I would just like to follow up. I mean, I think Jakota said everything so beautifully about, the scale of the investment, but I think it's also so critical that we hold these companies accountable because they do get a return on their investment. Investing in us produces a return that they're benefiting from. So it's not just investing in us, but by investing in us, they grow. They are able to capitalize on that. So we have to also be stakeholders and hold them accountable for long-term investments and investments that are mere symbolic, right? But are substantial, right? And so we need to remain critical and remain holding public entities and private entities accountable to do more than sort of just philanthropic giving. Right? We need to hold them accountable to help us help ourselves, right? So that means supplier pipelines, right? How to invest in Black wealth creation, how to encourage and invest in partnerships with Black entrepreneurs, right? So thinking about joint ventures, right? Not simply sort of symbolic gestures or, there's a lot of these programs that sort of just give these credentials, they're like credentialing programs, right? So the entrepreneur doesn't really end up with a venture that is in collaboration with the corporation. It's more so just sort of, now you have completed this course or you have completed this sort of programming, which is supposed to, in some sense, make them more credible when they were credible before, if that makes any sense. So I think we have to hold these organizations accountable because in truth, they really benefit from our Black talent and our Black genius, and they have been doing so for so long. So we need to also be partners in these deals, not just merely sort of beneficiaries of their quote unquote goodwill.
Absolutely. That makes complete sense. And would love to circle back. I want to get Nicole in this conversation, but would love to circle back to you, Dr. Cassie Claytor and Joteka, on some of the work that you all have been able to do with Sephora, talking about holding corporations accountable, but also walking with them as they are doing the work. And so I want to get Nicole in here, and then I'll come back to you all on that. Dr. Nicole.
Thank you for having me, and I'm very excited to be around these esteemed and distinguished women, including yourself, Michelle, as well as Melanie. I mean, I'll add, I'm a researcher, so my particular interest is, in all of the things that my colleagues have talked about, but more importantly, how do we quantify the outcomes that actually are imbued upon Black women in our current roles? I mean, that's one of the ways that you qualify and quantify whether or not that we're receiving equal justice and parity. So I would actually just put it out in 3 areas without sounding too redundant. I mean, I think one way to invest in Black women is to invest in our health. I cannot stress that enough, that Black women, particularly during this pandemic, I was reading a statistic the other day where women of color and Black women in particular have not been going to see their doctors during the pandemic. And with the increase in rise in the type of chronic condition or rare disease conditions that Black women have, it's important for us to see greater investments in Black women's health, because our health and our livelihood is actually really the fundamental positioning of the Black community in general. When we're not healthy and well, guess what? Our households suffer, our kids suffer, and in many respects, the various engagements that we have suffer. So I would like to see more investments there, particularly in maternal health, but really in this area of just making sure that Black women, whoever you are, by whatever income you have or health insurance, that you get care. And I think that is particularly important if we're trying to raise up a community to have the strength and the pillars that hold up our backs, right? When people try to pull them down. I think the other thing that I think is really important when we think about Black women and racial justice and equity is that we have to commit to the investments from both the private and public sector and Black women's safety. I have a 14-year-old daughter, and there are so many things that I have been concerned with over the course of this pandemic as she sits in a virtual environment, not necessarily the one of school, but the one of social media, the area in which I work. And we have to think about the extent to which we're making sure that our young girls in particular have the types of awareness raising when it comes to their safety. What has been so interesting, as we've talked about, for example, some of the just horrific crimes that we've seen committed against Black people, is that we've dismissed and sometimes, hollowed out the importance of saying her name. When we start to think about, not just physical and domestic abuse, but just, the type of brutality that we're seeing from law enforcement that is actually waged against Black women. We got to just really put a stop to that as we try to also put a stop to the type of behaviors that impose upon Black men. And then I would just say, finally, Black leadership. Black women's leadership makes a difference. I, like many of you, watched last night a Black woman representative out of Georgia get arrested. Right. And that arrest, in many respects, pierced my heart, like many other people, because not only was it reminiscent of Jim Crow laws and what we dealt with historically, but what it suggests is that Black women's leadership is being devalued in a space where we were at the center of many of those efforts. And I really want to humbly thank people like Joteka and others who really kept that center that you can win with Black women. And the more that we actually prepare Black women for campaigns, the more that we prepare them for positions in Brookings, the more that we prepare Black women to actually occupy the corporate and board ranks, we're actually investing in Black leadership and Black female leadership. And we know when we get together that there are a lot of great things happening. And so I think we cannot dismiss that. And we need to think carefully on how do we get more Black women in those leadership ranks, wherever they may be. I just said to my daughter a few minutes ago, I don't know how many of you have kids. She's on her last semester of the period, and she's just throwing up her hands. I said, no, girl, you gonna win. We win with Black women in this household, right? And so it's things like that we have to make sure that we have private and public sector investments in those areas.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I just got a message saying that we have to end by 2:15, and I will try my best to honor that. So we will have to do a lightning round on this final question.
220.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mel. So I can get 2 more questions in. I promise to come back to Dr. Cassie Claytor and Joteka on some of the work that they have been doing with Sephora. Joteka is an equity advisor with Sephora and helping them shape their diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And Dr. Claytor has been doing that work as well, but from the lens of a researcher. And they have done some phenomenal work together to be able to do a first of its kind study to figure out what we already know, but to quantify it, right? Sometimes people need to see stats of how we are negatively impacted in spaces. But it's just been some groundbreaking work to be able to figure out what are some of the pathways forward that we can actually shape the entire industry to treat Black women with the dignity and the respect that we deserve. As Joteka said, we have tremendous spending power. And in addition to our spending power, we have inherent value and worth and dignity that needs to be respected. So would love to toss back to you all for that, where you can talk a little bit about the work, what you learned along the journey as you did the research, and then I will close with a lightning round question for everybody.
So I would just say, we know that racism in the retail context is tremendously pervasive. And actually, when you ask Blacks how or what settings they experience racism most frequently, retail actually is the most frequent, even more so than interactions with the police. Right. So it is a critical space, not only for consumers, but also employees. So retail is one of the biggest employers in the country. The #1 employer in the country is Walmart. Right. So we really need to think about the importance of retail as a site of institutional and structural racism, and that racism enacts a toll on African-American consumers particularly. So the study really was groundbreaking, and I will commend Sephora in really trying to lead the industry to adapt new policies at the organizational level. This isn't a problem about a few bad actors who are racist or prejudiced. It's about policies that encourage or arguably discourage poor treatment of Black consumers, right? And so I really think it's amazing work, but it also had to be centered, and we really tried to push for it to be centered in metrics, in measurement, measuring the problem, seeing how salient it was, and then also thinking about solutions that can also be measured in terms of their impact. And so I think we need that across the board in different industries and different sectors, but we can't underestimate the importance of retail, partly because it's the site where African Americans in particular, in comparison to the workplace, in comparison to interactions with the police, that they have these frequent encounters with disrespectful and discriminatory treatment.
Absolutely. Anything you want to add there, Joteka, and before I go to our lightning round? You're muted, sis.
You know, I try not to be the person to do that. I always try not to be that person, but I end up that
It
person.
happens.
I would just add very quickly to, in addition to everything that Dr. Cassie just said, I think what's significant about this has been the journey and the walk that Sephora, and I think it's a lesson that other entities can really take a real lesson from, in that, you know, they made a conscious decision to walk along with Black women. Listening to Black women and following the leadership and the advice of Black women, and also made very tough decisions. I often tell and talk to many, many companies, particularly in Silicon Valley, that it's, you know, I think, and I'm going to hold my hands up, you know, this is where you are and this is where you may want to go or need to go. You know, people, and I believe the measure is your commitment and your investment in getting from here to there. That's where it's important. And I think Sephora, particularly in some of their decision making, as it related to space for Black owned beauty products in the store and in the experience. So going beyond making changes for just the very important customer experience, but also making a true investment in the business of Black women in beauty. We represent so much in beauty, and often that's an industry that puts us to a side or in a box. And I think it sets a standard for the rest of the industry. And so I think ultimately, you know, Sephora is an example, and I think other, you know, beauty brands and other entities can take a strong lesson in not only, you know, about creating real change inside the organization, but being a leader in industry, but also making a real critical investment in the business aspect of supporting and investing in Black women.
Yes, absolutely. It's about investing to create change. And with our final question, Nicole, this seems very apt for you to start us off as you talked about your young daughter. My final question is, the Black Women's Roundtable Summit has over 100 girls aged 13 to 17 in attendance this year for our virtual gathering. What would you say to those girls who are listening to encourage them that despite the barriers they face, the headwinds, that they can live out their possibilities, right? That they can one day be vice president and even president if they like. And that, you know, how do we keep them encouraged that they know, one, that they can do and achieve what they want to achieve, and two, that there will be headwinds, right? That they know our possibility. And so how do you encourage them to be prepared for those headwinds and to continue to keep moving forward? So over to you first, Nicole, then we can just close out with Joteka, Cassie, and Monifa.
Yeah, I don't want to sound like a Black Baptist preacher, but I will for just a second and say to every young Black girl that is watching this today, under the leadership of the coalition and Melanie Campbell, you have around you the people who have already done it. When I was growing up, we didn't have Black women who were the vice president of the United States. We didn't have Black women who were able to change the curve of election. We had Black women that we read about and knew about, right? Because we talked about them in the history books. But now, today, my daughter, for example, is able to see Black women actually doing it. She's able to not just see those that are written down in someone's journal or someone who shows up on TV, but she can look around in her neighborhood and see that, at the end of the day, it's not anybody's, fault except my own if there are desires and dreams that I have that I cannot reach. And so I would just say to all the young girls out there, like I tell my daughter all the time, you got this. That's like the biggest thing I say in my house all the time is that you got this. When she feels that she's struggling through something, I always just say, you got this, because guess what? Someone said that to us that are on this call, and someone is going to continue to say that to the next generation. This has been tough for the girls that are on, and I'm a realist, taking knows this. The pandemic has basically made us all feel as if, something has just been ripped away from us in terms of our conscience, as well as all the racial strifes and what we see day to day in terms of what our children experience on the TV. But in every, glass half empty story, there's a glass half full. And so I would just say to all the young girls, you are the glass half full, and you are the change around you. And if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't be setting up the people that are now in leadership, like a Vice President Harris, to actually remind you that you got this. And so I would just leave it there, because I'm just, that's one of those things when you raise a daughter, Joanna Kajubu says you love your sons and you raise your daughter. And my daughter's like, you're just so hard on me all the time. I have to just keep reminding her she's got this.
You got this. You got this. Thank you, Nicole. Joteka.
Yeah, I'll just say very quickly to all of you that are watching, that you are always and will always be and have always been enough. People will tell you over and over again that you're not something enough, fill in the blank, that you're not smart enough, that you're not good enough, you're not small enough, you're not fast enough, you're not whatever enough. You are enough. You are always enough. And if you ever doubt yourself, I just want you to just know that there is a space and place for you in every single place where you want to be. And whenever you doubt yourself, just tell yourself, get out of your own way, and know that there is always a place and space for you, and you're enough.
You are enough. Dr. Cassie?
I would just say, don't take no for an answer. And people are going to tell you, you can't do that, or, you don't deserve this, or I'm sorry, this isn't for you, or there's no opportunity. And I think we just have to have the attitude, no, I'm going to go ahead and do this. And this feels right to me, and I'm going to trust my intuition, and I'm going to move forward, and you're going to put hurdles in my way, and I'm going to jump over them. And so just don't let someone else tell you no, and you just accept it. Find a way, figure a way, maybe go back and rethink your plan, and just pursue what it is that you feel is meant for you. Don't let anybody else deprive you of what you feel is meant for you.
Absolutely. And Monifa.
Oh, well, we got you. We got you. The elders, we flank you. The ancestors flank you. You're never alone. You're never experiencing something in isolation. Even when everyone tells you that you are, it is not true. We're not faced by a mass epidemic of personal failures. There's systems in place that we are dismantling for you, and we'll do it together.
Absolutely. So in summation, you are more than enough. They knew you were possible. Even if they changed the rules, you got this. Don't take no for an answer. And we got you. That is the message of our collective power. And thank you, Mel, for being able to convene us once again for a powerful conversation. Congratulations on 10 years. We thank you for your service and your leadership, and we look forward to next year and all the days between that we will be standing shoulder to shoulder with you doing this work. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you. Big hugs virtually to Joteka and Dr. Nicole and Monifa and Dr. Cassie. Thank you all so very much. And working through all of the technology struggles we had today, but people need to hear what y'all had, the information. And I know that they're glad they did. So we're going to continue to invest in ourselves, invest in our girls and our boys and our families and our communities. And we're going to continue to lead. And so investing in Black women, we say, and Joteka, win with Black women, Just come on, follow Black women. We're not going to lead you wrong. So thank you so much, ladies. And we thank for doing this and being a partner with us in this test of wills when it comes to being an online summit. So thank you. Thank you for your leadership and sisterhood. I'm going to call on our sister, Lisa Fager. Where is Lisa? I saw Lisa somewhere. Lisa Fager, who's our...
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. If you could cut your camera on.
Yeah, I cut it on, but I'm not.
I saw you a minute ago. So Lisa Fager, if you hopefully you can get your camera on. But Lisa Fager, there you go, Lisa. So Lisa, want to turn over, and we're going to get ready to shift to our organizing sessions. And we know we are a little bit off schedule for our registered attendees. This will be, these sessions will not be online. They will be offline. So Lisa, want to tell us what to do? It's 2:25, so I guess in maybe 5 minutes at this point, to be realistic, or maybe 10. What do you think? That we can.
I think we should start at 2:30 and make it an even.
And then, okay, go ahead. Tell folks what's coming up next, Lisa. Turn it over to you. And Lisa is our senior advisor for resource development and program management. And so Lisa, with the National Coalition, also a Black Women's Roundtable member, former staffer, and never leaves the family. So Lisa, turn it over to you to give us our instructions.
Yes, I hope everybody's having a good time. And just like in person, sometimes we get a little behind because the conversation is so good and we get in. But this is the real, to me, the fun part where you get to dig in, where we get to hear from you. We get to hear and start organizing our agenda. And so what I like people to do is go over to the sessions. They'll run concurrently. They're only 50 minutes. It's kind of like a what do we call speed dating? And we really want to get into the meat of it and really get people's solutions, best practices, and if you have questions. So I would say go over there now. Let's be over there by 2:30, pick our sessions. They'll run every 50 minutes. So let's do it. Let's rebuild hope, equity, and justice. See you at 2:30.
Thank you, Lisa. And this concludes our public gathering for today. And then we come back this evening for a very, very important town hall meeting. For those who are registered with the summit, it is not, unfortunately, it is a private screening that we're going to be sharing. And let me pull that up. It's about Shirley Chisholm, Dr. Avis Jones DeWeaver, who's a senior advisor with the Black Women's Roundtable, has a treat for you. If I can find my text. So sorry, y'all. What we'll do it's a really strong piece on Shirley Chisholm, and an awesome panel. It starts at 6:30 p.m. So those of you who are registered, you'll get the information. So look for that. And it's from 6:30 to 8. It is a private screening just for those of you who are registered, and it will be a really, really nice treat. So get in there and get into those organizing sessions, and then we'll see you tonight with Dr. Avis Jones DeWeaver. Thank you so much. And for the public, we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, Michelle. Is she still there? Okay. All right. Thank you all.
And once again, thank you for joining the 10th Annual Black Women's Roundtable Women of Power Virtual National Summit. We are now transitioning to go to our Rebuild Hope organizing sessions. Thank you so much, and may you all have a blessed and wonderful day. Thank you for your participation. Goodbye.